A hunter opened a hidden door in the woods and found a fugitive asleep inside. The door was built into a Wisconsin embankment. Behind it was a working underground bunker. The man in that bed had been missing for 3 years, and until that door opened, police had no idea he was there. 3 years, 2 months, and 19 days underground. 1 solar panel, 1 pedal generator, 0 contact with the outside world. And he built the whole thing from stuff he pulled out of a landfill. Subscribe to Frond and hit the bell. We cover real cases, real facts, real sources, every single video. It's free. Now let's go back to the beginning. This is the case of Jeremiah Button, a Wisconsin man who vanished 2 weeks before trial and built an underground life no one was supposed to find. Portage County, Wisconsin, 2015. Jeremiah Button, 40 years old, is charged with child sexual assault and possession of child pornography, serious charges. A trial date is set, and for a while it looks like the system is going to work exactly the way it's supposed to. Then 2 weeks before his trial date, Jeremiah Button disappears. No goodbye. No note. No warning. He was supposed to be in a courtroom. Instead, he was gone, and he had apparently been planning this for a very long time. Here's the part that makes this case different from every other fugitive story. He didn't run when they arrested him. He started building the bunker. While his lawyers were filing motions, while the court dates were being set, he was out in the Wisconsin woods digging. This is what investigators call a premeditated flight. He didn't panic and run. He planned, he prepared, he stockpiled. He had an exit ready before anyone had decided to lock a door. He chose state land in the township of Ringel, public forest about 145 miles north of Madison. No one owned it. No one checked it. And the tree cover was dense enough that you could walk within 30 feet of what he was building and never know it was there. Every supply in that bunker came from one place, the Marathon County landfill. He wasn't buying anything. He wasn't leaving a paper trail. He was pulling canned food, tools, insulation, furniture, every single item from trash that nobody wanted. Inside that log door, canned food stacked in storage boxes, a bed, insulation on the walls, a pedal generator for power, a solar panel running through the roof, a living space that was small but functional. He was not surviving. Deputies said he was, quote, thriving. He ran a solar panel up through the bunker roof, feeding it down to a battery system. When the sun wasn't enough, he pedaled a generator he'd found in the trash. The man had electricity underground in a Wisconsin forest for over 3 years. Let's break down exactly what was in that bunker, because the engineering of it is part of what makes this case so remarkable. The canned food he stockpiled gave him months of supplies. He rotated stock. He managed his calories. 3 years underground means roughly 1,000 meals, and he planned every one before he ever closed that log door for the first time. And then there are the winters. Wisconsin winters hit -20. Underground gives you natural insulation. The earth stays around 50 degrees year-round, regardless of what's happening above. He survived 2 full Wisconsin winters down there without a conventional heating system. Think about 3 years without talking to another human being, without news, without internet, without knowing what was happening outside that log door, completely cut off by choice. While he was underground, a warrant was out for his arrest. Police in Portage County checked his known addresses. They asked people who knew him. The trail went cold almost immediately, because the trail, quite literally, went underground. He left no digital footprint. No credit card activity, no phone, no social media, nothing. Every modern tool law enforcement uses to find people requires the person to participate in the modern world. He had opted out completely. Months passed, then a year, then 2. The Portage County case stayed active on paper, but without a lead, without a sighting, without a single piece of evidence pointing anywhere. There was nothing to follow. Surviving underground is only the first strange part. The harder question is what he did with 3 years of silence. No phone, no news, no people, no future except not being found. When every day has one job, stay hidden, what happens to the person inside the bunker? Psychologists who study solitary confinement say the human mind begins to break down after 72 hours without social contact. Button was down there for over 1,000 days. Whatever he was when he went in, he was something different when he came out. Above his roof, spring, summer, autumn, winter, spring, summer, autumn, winter, spring. Deer walking over his solar panel. Hunters moving through the forest within earshot. The world going about its business with no idea that a wanted man was 12 feet below it. Several months before the arrest, a hunter named Thomas Nelson was moving through that stretch of state forest. He noticed something that shouldn't have been there. A log door set into an embankment. He looked at it. He didn't go in, and he left. But it stayed with him, a door in a forest where there should be no door. A few months later, on a Friday morning in August 2019, Thomas Nelson went back. The door was unlatched, and this time he went in. I push the door open and I look inside and I can see canned foods. There's little storage boxes and I'm like, I gotta go in. He went further, came around a corner, and there he was. A man lying in a bed. Nelson said later he was shaking when he went in, and he was shaking when he went out. Thomas Nelson had no idea he was about to find a fugitive. He was curious about a door. That's it. He wasn't a bounty hunter. He wasn't law enforcement. He was a man in the woods who couldn't stop thinking about a door that shouldn't exist. Nelson backed out of the bunker, walked far enough away that he was out of earshot, and called police. He then stood in that forest and waited, guiding deputies back to a door that most people would have walked past 1,000 times without seeing. Marathon County Sheriff's deputies arrived and Nelson guided them back to the embankment. They confirmed what he'd seen, called for backup. Then they stood outside a log door in the middle of the Wisconsin woods and waited for whoever was inside to come out. There was a 20-minute standoff. Button was inside. Deputies were outside. No shots were fired, no violence. After 20 minutes, he surrendered. He came out of that log door, walked into the sunlight, and it was over. August 9, 2019. Jeremiah Button surrendered after a 20-minute standoff. He had been underground for over 3 years. When Marathon County Sheriff's Deputy Matt Kecker walked into that bunker, he said later that Button seemed almost glad. Glad for human interaction. 3 years alone had done exactly what 3 years alone does to a person. Almost glad. That detail matters. He didn't fight. He didn't run again. He came out, and he was almost glad. Whatever victory he thought he was winning by hiding, by the end, it didn't feel like winning anymore. Marathon County Sheriff's Office spokesperson Candace Stefanek said this: he was not only surviving, but thriving in this structure through all of the different supplies he was able to find. Not surviving, thriving, from landfill garbage. Let's be specific about this. Thriving from a landfill means identifying what has value before others discard it, repurposing structural material, managing caloric needs from found canned goods, and engineering power generation from salvaged components. That is not luck. That is skill. None of this was improvised. He had built the bunker over months. He had stockpiled before he ran. He had a working power system ready. He knew exactly where he was going and exactly how long he planned to stay. The only thing he didn't plan for was a curious hunter. Jeremiah Button was taken into custody on August 9, 2019, and held on a $100,000 cash bond. He was scheduled for a pretrial conference on September 16th. The trial that had been scheduled for February 2016 was finally going to happen, 3.5 years late. Public defenders were assigned to his case the day after his arrest. His original attorney had withdrawn back in February 2017, a year after Button had fled. New lawyers, new pretrial conference, same charges. 3 years underground had changed nothing about the case waiting for him. That's the part that should stick with you. He spent 3 years, 2 months, and 19 days underground, isolated, alone, in the dark. And when he came out, the charges were exactly the same. The case was exactly the same. Fleeing didn't help him. It just delayed the inevitable. This case turns on one decision. One hunter saw a strange door, left, and then came back. If he had not gone back, the bunker stays closed, the trail goes quiet again, and Jeremiah Button may have kept living under that forest with nobody above ground knowing where to look. The most disturbing detail is that he was not at the end. He had canned food left. His power system still worked. The structure was still holding. Investigators said he showed no signs of malnutrition. If he had months of supplies when the door opened, the real question is not how long he survived. It is how much longer he could have stayed hidden. Law enforcement specialists who study fugitive behavior say that most people who flee don't plan further than 48 hours. Button planned for years. He knew the land. He knew the landfill schedule. He knew the solar angles. He was not a desperate man. He was a methodical one. But methodical doesn't mean free. 3 years underground is 3 years of knowing you can never surface. Never talk to anyone. Never leave without risking everything. The bunker was a prison he built himself, and unlike a real prison, he had no release date. Jeremiah Button fled February 2016. Built an underground bunker on state forest land. Found by Hunter Thomas Nelson on August 9, 2019. Arrested after a 20-minute standoff. Held on $100,000 bond. Every fugitive case ends the same way. Sometimes it takes a week, sometimes it takes a decade. Occasionally it takes a curious hunter in a Wisconsin forest. But they end. The charges wait. The system waits. You can go underground. You cannot go undiscovered forever. Thomas Nelson has said he was simply curious. He didn't know he was solving a 3-year manhunt. He didn't know a wanted man was sleeping behind that door. He just wanted to know what a locked door in the middle of the forest was doing there. Most people who find a door in a forest don't go in. They note it and walk on. Nelson came back twice. The second time all the way inside. If it had been almost anyone else on that path that morning, Button would have stayed underground, and no one would ever know. Marathon County Sheriff's Office released photos of the bunker interior after the arrest. Cramped, cluttered, organized, a life built from other people's discards. The images spread globally because they answered a question most people didn't even know they had. What does a man's life look like when he decides to disappear? The story spread because it contains something almost impossible to fake, genuine human ingenuity applied to the wrong problem. He used real skill, real engineering, and real discipline to hide from justice. That contradiction is what makes it impossible to look away from. He built something remarkable, a functioning underground habitat powered from salvaged solar, stocked from landfill, hidden on public land, surviving 3 Wisconsin winters. He built it to escape accountability, and the only thing more remarkable than what he built is that it almost worked. The charges that caused him to run in the first place, child sexual assault and possession of child pornography, were serious. He was eventually tried and convicted. The details of the trial are in the public record and in the description below. For law enforcement, this case is a lesson. Button evaded a warrant for over 3 years by doing something no digital tracking system is designed to find. He opted out of the modern world entirely. No phone, no purchases, no social media, no human contact. He became temporarily invisible. The final irony in all of this, he built his bunker on state land, public property, the same state he was running from. In a way, the government of Wisconsin housed him for 3 years, unknowingly without his permission being asked, and without charging him rent. Deputies said he seemed almost glad. Those 2 words sit with me more than any other detail in this case. He planned for years. He executed perfectly. He survived 1,000 days alone. And when the door finally opened and the law came in, he was almost glad. Somewhere in the forests of Marathon County, that bunker is still there. The locked door has been opened. The supplies removed as evidence. The solar panel taken down. But the cavity in the embankment, the hole he dug himself, that's still in the hillside. The state land he borrowed without asking. This case keeps coming back to one uncomfortable truth. The same intelligence, discipline, and survival instinct that he used to hide for 3 years. Those aren't rare qualities. What's rare is applying them to something that ends well. Everything in this video is drawn from public record, court documents from Portage and Marathon County, the Marathon County Sheriff's Office press statements, and verified wire reporting from NBC, CNN, AP, and Fox News. Full links in the description. A hunter pushed open a door in the woods. On the other side was a man who had been running from the law for 3 years, 2 months, and 19 days. And when that door opened, he was almost glad. That is the whole story. Everything else is just detail. The forest in Marathon County doesn't know what happened in that embankment. The trees grew through his 3 years the same way they grew through every other year. The only mark left on that hillside is a door, and the story behind it. And now, you know that story too. Sources for this investigation are in the description: court records, Marathon County Sheriff's press statements, AP wire reports, and local Wisconsin news coverage. Everything you saw is from the public record. Nothing was invented. The bunker only makes sense if he kept leaving it. 3 years is too long for one stash of cans. Investigators believe he made quiet, irregular trips to the landfill at night, moving through the forest, taking what he needed, and getting back underground before dawn. The hideout worked because the outside world never noticed the pattern. The pedal generator is the detail that tells you the most about his state of mind. On days when the Wisconsin sky was overcast and the solar panel gave nothing, he sat down and pedaled. He generated electricity with his legs in a hole in the ground. Alone. For 3 years. Survivalists call underground shelters a last resort for a reason. The human brain needs horizon. It needs the sense of open space to maintain equilibrium. He removed both permanently. What he called freedom, psychology calls a different word entirely. Above ground in Wisconsin in January, temperatures hit -15, -20. Underground, the earth stays between 45 and 55 degrees year-round. It is survivable, but it is also completely permanently dark unless you generate the power yourself. Every hour of light underground was an hour he earned. Police interviewed people from his life after his arrest. The picture that emerged was of a man who had already been quietly withdrawing, fewer social contacts, less engagement, as if he had been practicing disappearing before he actually did it. His original defense attorney withdrew from the case in February 2017, a full year after Button fled. Attorneys can withdraw when a client becomes unreachable. That withdrawal is a small procedural note in the court record, but it marks the moment when even his own legal representation gave up trying to find him. There was no dramatic manhunt, no multi-state task force, no aerial search, because there was nothing to search. He had left no trail, made no contact, and built his hiding place before anyone was looking. By the time the warrant was issued, he had already been underground for weeks. While he was underground, a U.S. presidential election happened. 2 Wisconsin winters. 3 summers, hundreds of news cycles, tragedies, events that moved the world, none of which reached him 12 feet below the forest floor. He stepped out in 2019 into a world that had moved on without him. After the arrest, investigators documented everything inside, every can, every tool, every item from the landfill. It became evidence in a case that had been waiting for a defendant for 3 years. The bunker that had been his refuge became a crime scene. There is one more dimension to this case that never gets covered. When he went underground in 2016, he was 40 years old. He came out in 2019 at 44. He spent 4 years of his middle life in a hole. That is time he cannot recover. The system waited. Time didn't. 20 minutes. Deputies outside. Button inside. No violence, no threats recorded in the public account. In the end, he simply came out. What passed through his mind in those 20 minutes, knowing that 3 years of perfect hiding had come down to a man who opened the wrong door on a Friday morning, that's not in any report. When he stepped through that log door on August 9, 2019, it was a warm Wisconsin summer morning. He hadn't felt direct sunlight in over 3 years. Whatever else that moment meant legally for about 30 seconds, it was just a man stepping into the sun. Most famous fugitives are caught through human contact, a phone call, a purchase, a face recognized. Eric Frond hid in Pennsylvania woods for 48 days before capture. Christopher Dorner lasted 9 days. Button lasted over 3 years. The difference is a bunker and a landfill. Every other famous fugitive made contact with the outside world to survive, and that contact got them caught. Button solved that problem by going to a place where no one interacts. At a landfill, nobody asks who you are. Nobody checks your ID. You just take what nobody wants. Deputies said he seemed almost glad. Not relieved at being caught, almost glad at being found, at seeing another human face, at having someone speak to him. 3 years of silence had made the arrival of law enforcement feel like something close to company. 2 public defenders were assigned to his case within 24 hours of his arrest. Public defenders in Wisconsin handle enormous caseloads. They inherited a 3-year-old case, a client who had been underground for over 1,000 days, and a pre-trial conference set for 6 weeks out. On September 16, 2019, Jeremiah Button appeared in a Wisconsin courtroom for the first time since vanishing in February 2016. The courtroom was the same. The charges were the same. The only thing that had changed was how long it had taken to get him there. Jeremiah Button was ultimately convicted. His case moved through the court system and concluded. The details of his sentencing are in the public record, court documents from Portage County, Wisconsin, available through the state court system. We've linked the primary sources below. Bunker is still in that hillside in the township of Ringel. The forest doesn't care that it's there. Moss is growing over the log door. The solar cable is gone. In a few more years, the trees will make it disappear the same way they hid it when he was alive. Only this time, nobody will be home. Sources for this investigation are in the description. Court records from Portage and Marathon County, Wisconsin, the Marathon County Sheriff's Office official press statements, and verified wire reporting from NBC News, CNN, AP, and Fox News. Everything you saw is from the public record. Nothing was invented. If this video kept you watching, hit the like button, subscribe to Frond, and tap the bell. We drop a new investigation every week. We'll see you in the next one.